Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Adventure Belt. My name is Kelly. My Tacoma's paint is getting destroyed from rocks and mud and dirt and all kinds of other things because my 35s, they stick out just a little bit. They got a little bit of poke to them. So this is going to fix that. I've got brand new fender flares from RDJ Trucks. Let's get them put on. Stay tuned. Alright guys, before we get into this install, if you have seen more than one Adventure Built video, you should subscribe because YouTube really wants you to. Alright, let's get into this. So I was having issues with my paint getting chipped around the wheel wells, which is a very common issue when you've got a little poke from your tires sticking out past your stock fender flares. Now, my paint's in pretty good shape, but I'm starting to get chipping that I don't like. Before I get any more damage to my paint, I ended up ordering these fender flares from RDJ Trucks. These are the Pro Extend Streamlined fender flares, and they're really nice. These mimic the look of my stock Tacoma fender flares, which is really what I was going for. I didn't want my truck looking too outside of stock when it comes to fender flares. I really like the stock look. But if you do like the style with the kind of exposed bolts, the more RDJ calls it the Pro Truck bolt-on fender flares, where the bolts are all exposed, they sell those too. Those are cool, just not my style. These Pro Extend fender flares, they come in 4 different kind of textures. They come in smooth black and texture black, and for an extra $130 you can get these in a Rhino Skin, and it's smooth and textured. And this is actually the smooth. There still is some texture to it. It's not a perfectly flat, but obviously when you start Rhino lining things, you're gonna get some texture. That's just how the product works. But they look really, really nice. And you can also option to get these painted body color if you so choose. All right, real quick, before we start the install, let's go over what's in the box. You've got your front fender flare, your rear fender flare, and obviously there's for both sides. You have a mounting block for the front. You've got some 3M edge trim, and then you have a bag of hardware, and that's it. Let's get this thing started. Working on the driver's side, better known as the left side, as all the parts are referred to, there will be a LR and an RR on all of the other parts that we're putting on the truck, and this is the LR, or left R, or driver's side. Step number 1 is going to be using a 10mm socket and removing all of the bolts that hold the fender in place. I've only got 5 bolts because of all the cutting to the fenders I've done. You should probably have more like 8. The next step is going to be removing the fender, and the fender is held on by 3M tape around the outer edge here, and then a bunch of clips in the middle, and you kind of have to work both at the same time. I found it best to use a heat gun and kind of heat the fender up, especially right now. It's a little bit chilly out, even in the desert. It just helps the tape kind of come apart a lot easier. When I'm pulling this with 2 hands, I've got one hand behind the fender on this side and one hand behind the fender on this side, and I can feel there's a clip right here because it wants to bend right here in the middle. So I can get my fingers as close to the middle as I can and pull straight back. As you can see on the very front part of the fender, there's this clip. It's like a one-way. You just got to kind of pull it hard. It comes right out. The fender is off, and it really wasn't complicated. You can obviously leave these clips. You can leave the dirt. You can leave the sticky residue from the 3M tape if you want. The new fenders will cover it all, and it won't make a bit of difference. However, I'm gonna pull the clips, and I'm gonna clean this up, and I'm gonna clean up the tape for 2 reasons. 1, these clips are in here kind of loose, and I'm afraid that this would just rattle, and I might hear it in the cab, and it'll bother me. 2, I might hear some other noise, and assume it's these clips, and then be bothered that I didn't pull them. So to prevent myself some aggravation, I'm just gonna pull them now. They're really easy to do, and then I'm gonna clean this all up. So to pull the clips, all you have to do, take a pair of pliers, grab the head. Most of mine are broken anyway. And all you can do is turn them 1/2 turn and they pull right out. Okay, the clips are all out and I'm just gonna clean this up and then start removing this tape. And now I'm gonna use the Wonder Wheel to get this 3M residue off. You wanna make sure you use the Wonder Wheel only on the painted surfaces that are metal, not the surfaces that are plastic. On the other side, it burned right through the paint on the plastics. I also found that the Wonder Wheel puts out a nasty residue. You can see just from doing the other side, this disc has been worn down quite a bit. So I'm using a mask to kind of protect my lungs from that kind of just contaminants. You can see just with the Wonder Wheel that it took the bulk of all of that sticky residue off of the fender. Now I'm just gonna use some Goo Gone and go over it to get anything that's just left over. Now I'm just gonna spray it with some Windex just to kind of get the rest of the residue of the Goo Gone off. All right, this looks really good. Now we're gonna prep the fenders for install. In the kit is a long section of this rubber gasket that is a 3M adhesive on one side, and it's basically kind of a claw that hooks into this top edge of the trim. And this is what goes against the top of the trim to the body. This rubber gasket will protect your paint from the plastic edge with the constant vibration. I'm gonna show you really quick the process of how I'm gonna apply this to the fender with it not being on the fender, because it's a little bit tricky to see because it's so small. What I'm actually gonna do is first I'm gonna peel the edge of this red off. Then I'm gonna open this channel up and I'm gonna slide it over, and then I'm basically gonna let it go and it's gonna collapse on the edge and it's gonna make a nice seal. And this is gonna go on as one continuous strip all the way from this point around the top edge all the way to the bottom point on this side. So you can see here inside of the U channel, there's the red backing to the tape itself. All I'm gonna do is work this out with my finger and my fingernail so that I can separate the backing of the red cover to the adhesive itself. And once you get it off, only pull off like an inch and a half. And now starting at this top edge, I'm gonna open it up. And all I'm doing is basically just pressing this on. You definitely want to make sure you don't fold the gasket on top of itself. Make sure the gasket is laying flat on the plastics. I also have the fender laying on a towel on my wooden workbench to not scratch the surface of the fender. And now you know where the end's gonna be. Take a good pair of scissors and come back just a little bit and cut it. Now take a minute to go back and make sure that this whole thing is nice and straight. Everything's laying flat on the fender. And now for the most satisfying part of this install is pulling this red backer tape. Now when you pull it, make sure you pull it nice and even and pull it back on top of itself so it doesn't break and have to tear this off. Before we install the fender, we actually have to install this upper trim piece. And this is basically an adapter for the top part of the fender here to mount the new fender up. So this bracket here inserts under the fender into the stock locations. And before you insert it, you have two of these clips. You have to insert these two clips into the bracket. And when you're looking at the bracket, after it's inserted, you'll see these two holes here are the ones that are facing you. These are the ones that receive these clips. When putting the clips on, make sure that the little lip faces up. We're gonna use 3 of the factory bolts to insert this bracket right here. Time to install the fender. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it up and I'm gonna put these 2 bolts in first because I know that they're good. And then basically you have to manipulate this to get it on. While you're going through, also make sure this top gasket here doesn't get sucked in. You might end up scratching the paint trying to get it out. So be aware of this top gasket. In installing it, you're using the brand new black bolts you got in the installation kit. Having a flashlight will allow you to kind of see the holes a little bit better. And the new bolts are a 10 mil socket. And once I get the bolt into the hole, I just give it a few threads just to make sure it stays, but not seated all the way in case I have to take it off or something. So that's all the bolts I can put in. I've got a lot of modifications on this thing. So I can't put a bolt in here. I can't put a bolt in the bottom because the bolt holes have basically been bent in a little bit so that I can make clearance for these 35s. So now that I have it where I want it, looking at the gasket, everything looks good. It actually came out a little bit here in the bottom corner. I just re-centered the gasket and pushed it on. It went right on. Now I'm gonna tighten this whole thing up and it will be done. Okay, that's it. Moving to the rear, it's almost the exact same process, except you don't have the bracket here in the middle, so it's a little bit easier. I ran into a little bit of an issue right here where the gas door, the plastics are molded in just a little bit, and the trim here, it wants to keep popping off as you pull it tight going through this curve. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull the adhesive all the way back over this notch right here to make sure that it's nice and tight. That way I can work the rest of the way around. All right guys, that wraps up this install of these RDJ trucks Pro Extend fender flares for my 2020 Tacoma. Now the install was super easy. It would take an average dude in his garage maybe 2 hours to do, and I will put all the tools I used as well as the Wonder Wheel, which was a huge time saving for removing that 3M tape, in the description below. Lucky for you guys, I actually lost the initial closeout of this video. Somehow it erased off my card, so it's about a month later and I'm redoing it. Luckily though, now I have a month's worth of information knowledge I can share with you guys about how these fender flares perform. So I've done 2 trips, one in the desert, one up north in the snow, and they performed very well. I wouldn't say that it stops all of the muck from getting on my truck, but what it's stopping is the rock chips. I haven't had a single ding or click or anything that I normally get from when rocks are pinging off my paint. So that is a huge win for RDJ trucks. The fenders, they really do work, and they're really a good quality. On our trip to the Box Canyon, I had some rubbing going on with some bushes, and the fender flares, they didn't scratch. The coating on it is really strong and sturdy and definitely held up to the torture. One last thing I want to address is the look of these fenders. Now the Pro Extend fenders, they mimic the look of the stock Tacoma fenders the best that I have seen around. I really like the way the stock fenders look on the Tacomas, and I like the way my truck looked with the 35s and those stock fenders, and this look is really attractive to my eye, especially because it replicates the stock look so well. All right guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. All right guys, it is time for the giveaway. This VoSwitch UV100, okay, well not this one. The one that I'm giving away is not arrived yet. This is the box of mine. However, this type UV100 will go to one lucky winner. Now we're doing this old school. I don't really know how to use all the computer generated number stuff, so we're doing old school. I got paper, I'm gonna cut it up, put it in the pot, and we're gonna draw one lucky winner. All of the entries are in this bowl right here, and you guys have a really good chance of winning. But remember, there can only be one. If you don't win, be sure to take advantage of that 20% off from VoSwitch. I'll put the discount code right here. I will also link the website in the description below along with the discount code, so be sure to check that out. It expires at the end of the month. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's do this drawing. John Schreier. John Schreier, you are the winner. I hope I didn't butcher your name too bad. John Schreier, I will comment on your comment for you to contact me, and I will post this on IG later today. Thank you guys all so much for entering into this giveaway, our very first ever giveaway, and hopefully we have a lot more to come. All right, thanks guys. See you next time.